And waiting for the pop-up to let us know we're recording. There we go. So again, fair warning, we are recording the session, hoping that people still feel free to contribute. So welcome to today's little session talking about online learning in particular. We are the group talking about that. Just wanted to introduce myself quickly. I'm Mark Lubrick. I'm here from the University of Windsor in Ontario, Canada. I work in the Office of Open Learning as a learning specialist, and I get to help people build online courses, resources, and programs. So I think that's one of the reasons they asked for me to help facilitate this discussion today, because it's kind of around what I do. That being said, my role here today is just to help promote the conversation. I'm hoping that you will be the ones talking, and if there's things you're interested in talking about, please, we can go that route as well. I have some questions that we can explore, but if there's something that's more interesting to you, let's go in that direction. This is meant to be your talk. So let's maybe get started with the first question. And if you prefer using the chat, if you want to turn on your microphones, your cameras, whatever you're most comfortable with. And the first question is about the idea of the sessions you've had in the past day. And was there any kind of research theories or findings that really align with your own personal beliefs or completely contradict your personal beliefs? And if so, like what kind of similarities to your own beliefs? What kind of differences were there? Anything you have to say about the yesterday's sessions?
Good morning, Mark.
Group?
Can you
Hi.
hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I hope it's okay. I just leave my picture there.
Yeah, whatever you're most comfortable with.
I'll introduce myself first. So I work at the University of Manitoba, Faculty of Education, and my area is teaching English as additional language. Before last fall, I never taught any online courses, so I was really scared about like, okay, how it's going to happen and what I need to do. So I went to a lot of workshop that's offered by our university, and still there's that anxiety of not sure what's going to happen. Guess what? After now this is my third term teaching online. I actually like the potential of online teaching, and so this is kind of my brief introduction, but just to respond to your question, Mark, um, I believe teaching is relational. So when the university offered to have asynchronous and synchronous, I never had a doubt that I would go asynchronous, just because I believe it's so relational. So all my courses have been synchronous, and I'm really comfortable, and I find students really appreciate it, because I think as a person, I don't want to stare at a computer screen for hours without seeing anybody. Just feel like I'm talking to myself, right? If I felt that way, and I'm thinking my student probably will feel the same way, and that's why I just go, even though it's online, and it is a very different relationship online than in person. People are like face to face, but I think I still like this synchronous, because even though it's virtual, we are still kind of in the same space at the same time. So I just see a lot more potential that I never thought about before I was forced to teach online. So I'll start with that. Thank you.
Thank you. That's great. And actually, yeah, if anyone who's comfortable at least wants to introduce themselves, I think that'd be a great way to get started today as well. I can see George has his hand up. I think your
I think I
mic
see
might
George's
not.
hand.
Yeah. I'm not sure if his mic is on yet. Doesn't look like it. George, do you want to share? And of course, if you want to introduce yourself, that'd be great.
George, your mic is off.
Yeah, we still can't hear you. I hate to jump over someone, but maybe while George works on getting his mic working, I saw Anita had raised her hand next. Maybe we can go to her and then loop back to George after.
Hi, everybody. So I'm here in Windsor. I work at the university, but I teach at the college. And we've been online for the last 3 terms. We are asynchronous, have to be asynchronous because we have a lot of our international students who went home. I struggle with the fact that sometimes I lecture to no one. So I'm online, just this happened this past Tuesday, and I lecture for an hour and a half and 2 hours sometimes with 0 students logging in. I know that they're going to go back to my lecture. I know that because it's all recorded and posted. But I struggle with the idea that I'm unable to interact. I'm unable to get to know my students. I'm unable to really get to know their personalities, answer any questions they might have, make any type of an interactive lecture because they're just not there. So I'm wondering if you guys have any experience in, that mindset of a post-secondary student who's given the option of an asynchronous, but knowing that the lecture is online every week at the exact same time, why aren't they logging in? And that, so I just, if you have any type of suggestions or advice on how to engage with the students, maybe even outside of lecture time, since I know that they're not logging in, because that's something that I'm struggling with, because it's hard for me to assign grades and things. And, I get emails from students asking why they got this grade, or can I increase their grade or something like that. And I don't know them. I don't know them. I don't know their work ethic. I can't interact with them. So just looking for some advice that way.
Mark, could I respond to Anita? Okay. I actually sent my course outline before my course, the first day of my course, and in my course outline, I said that there's no recording for my lectures or whatever, and then they will need to read all assigned readings before come to class. And my online synchronous sessions are mainly for discussions, group work, breakout room activities. So they need to prepare in order to participate and to be there. And I also request that they turn on their video so that I can see them. And then it also, I think, allow them to feel connected to people instead of just stare at a screen with all those little boxes, right? So I think it's important to set the rules in your course outline. So if they are not comfortable, they may not choose to take your course, but that's okay. But once you have that expectation there, I think probably that will help a little bit with have synchronous classes, but nobody kind of signing, because they think, okay, all the lectures are there, then why would I come and just sit there and watch the recorded lectures or whatever, right? So yeah, so that's kind of my little bit.
I would love for that to be an option. I'm actually mandated to have an asynchronous and record my lectures because a large majority of my students are in other countries and in other time zones. So my class time is at midnight, 2 a.m. their time. So I have, the school mandates me to have it as asynchronous and record. So and I do fun things. I try to do Kahoot quizzes. I try to get them involved. Nothing is getting them to come online right now.
Oh, I didn't know
Yeah.
that the
Yes.
time factor, the time zone, because my courses are offered in the evening, so it's kind of early. So 5:30 in my time, and then it will be 6:30 their time. I kind of
Mhm.
try to adjust a little bit, 15 minutes later, so that they have 15 extra minutes to sleep a little bit. But that's the thing. If it's their midnight, then I think as a university, we are offering courses. We need to follow their time zone, not ours. Because like, who would stay awake in the middle of the night? So I
Right.
also
Yeah.
have international students from China, and then they need to, in order to take part in my course, they need to get up at 6 or 6:30 in the morning. But I think that's still better than 2 or 1 in the middle of the night. I didn't know the, I guess, the context of your teaching, so that's hard.
Well, the other interesting part about the school that I teach for is the students are put into cohorts and they are assigned classes. So they don't actually get to choose what time their classes are at. They are assigned 5 courses, and those courses are at whatever time the school has decided that it's going to be at. Their exams the same way. Yeah, it's very it's not flexible in that way. They just have there's a lot of students in the program that I teach in, and it's their only way of managing. And frankly, it really does work. If we weren't virtual, if we were here in class,
Yeah.
it works really well. The students they know what their schedule is. They're with the same 30 students every class that they go to. So group projects, they get to know each other really well. It's really nice in a in-class setting. But for virtually, I just find that, and it's not something I can control. It's an administrative decision. But I just find that they just, and a lot of these students are on their 3rd, if not 4th semester online. So they figured out ways to do the least amount that's possible and still, complete the course. So it's just a struggle that I'm kind of going with, but I'm hoping that we're back in the classroom for September or at least January, so it won't be an issue anymore.
Yeah, but what happens if we are still online?
Yeah, right.
I mean, I do think some of the points you'd shared could help. The idea of kind of almost like the flipped class you're talking about, where they have to come prepared to have a discussion. But of course, depending on the things like cohort, that still might not be the easiest thing to overcome, because yeah, you might get 1 or 2 motivated ones coming in at 2 in the morning, but most won't. Looks like Kathy has some ideas.
Yeah, I think the student population is also probably different. Mine is more mature student. They are practicing teachers taking courses, so they choose to come to my course. They choose to take that course. So I think the motivation is also different. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, but I think Crystal had her hand up before me. So let's ask Crystal first, all right?
Oh, I was more just going to introduce myself just to say hello to everyone. I'm a master's student at the University of Calgary and also a part-time advisor in the education office. And so I'm just curious to hear what people have to say about the shift to online learning at different institutions, and partly because right now I'm interviewing students for my thesis, and a few of them have talked about how they kind of like the online learning more because they can engage with their family and culture, and it's a bit less stressful for them, the commute times, and so for them, sometimes the online structure has been really working.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for sharing. I think we can turn it over to Kathy.
Thank you, Crystal. Anita, I totally resonate with what you're saying. I had taught online courses before the pandemic hit and wasn't fond of them. So when I teach at Wilfrid Laurier. So, and online is very distinct as it is at the college where you're at. If it's online, there was not any opportunity for synchronous. But because it was a face-to-face situation, students who were struggling, I would contact them and tell them to come and meet me. And so I'd actually meet them face-to-face. So, but that was pre-pandemic. So now suddenly everything went online and we go remote, and I'm going synchronous, asynchronous, synchronous, asynchronous, and the balance was nice. That worked, but I still could see them occasionally, right? But then with my online courses, the same thing was happening, Nina. I totally get what you're saying. And I really struggled with it. I didn't struggle as much with the I can't see you because I have a television background. So I realized if I'm looking at this little dot on my screen, I'm looking at you and I'm talking to you and I'm addressing an audience. So I tried to make it as intimate as possible with that in mind. I'm like a host on a show and I am entertaining. It's not just lecturing. I'm going to do things. I'm going to show you things. I'm going to get up. I was pulling things in. I put on costumes. I went the whole 9 yards. Okay. And it worked. People found it really engaging and humorous. So I knew they were watching. And once I started to tag that, then I started with the emails. Send. I haven't heard from you. Can we contact? When can I talk to you? Can we meet? So I started trying desperately to arrange one-on-one meetings with them through Zoom or Teams. So I could see their faces and I could say, what's going on with you? What are your goals? I tried to make it as absolutely personal as possible. And it was a lot more work for me, but I did make significant gains. I did. And there's this constant sending out a poll, what's going on? How are you? Are we depressed? Just trying to be funny, keep it light, but find out what's going on. I also started my online courses with profiles. Why are you taking my course? What do you need from me? I'm here, but only if you reach out to me. I tried to make it personal. And it didn't work for all of the students, but it did work for quite a few, more than half. So, and also when I was designing the online courses, I did some videos and narrated PowerPoints so that they always saw my face and heard my voice. And I'd say, I'd love to hear from you. And then I started responding with feedback through video. So they felt like they were talking to someone. So even if I couldn't see them, I knew they at least were seeing me, and I was making some impact. I hope that helps.
No, that's great. That's great advice. Thank you.
That's definitely very helpful. I'm glad to hear it was so successful. I was gonna say a couple comments as well. I mean, especially when you're more limited to, say, the asynchronous approach, it might also be that you have to start thinking of ways of trying to engage and get to know your students asynchronously. I mean, there's the discussion forums, of course, which can work depending. Also, I loved Kathy's suggestion about doing videos, and I know some instructors who've also even had their students do simple short videos. They don't have to be high quality, might just be using their phone and then posting it, and that can be a way for people to introduce themselves as well. Getting them to work in groups to really engage with each other can help. And yeah, I think can see Trenum might have something to say as well.
Yeah, Mark, just adding on to what you just mentioned, I think what you're referring to is kind of tools and technologies such as Flipgrid. So one can use those students to introduce maybe. So what I did was asking students to record videos and just to introduce themselves, to help them engage and to have more interaction in the class, although it was again a balance of nice asynchronous and synchronous. And I agree with Anita, it's really hard given the different time zones, especially with the international students. So I totally hear Anita what she's saying, but I think there are ways to interact, such as what Mark you just mentioned, having those videos and flip grids, which we can then embed in the course design, and then having those videos posted, then everybody can see each other, hear from each other, and there is some connection, some sense of online community and a social presence. So those are my 2 cents.
Not sure if someone has anything they want to add to that, or Not sure if anyone else has other comments they want to. I know most of us still haven't introduced ourselves, or if you want to jump in and say who they are, or if there's any pressing thing that you want to talk about. Oh, looks like George, I see your mic might be working.
Oh, hi. I don't know if it's me. Probably there is a mistake, and I just don't know. Maybe it's me. Anyway, can I talk now?
Yep, can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. Maybe the username is mixed up. Sorry about that. Okay. Anyway, here's Judy, and I'm teaching over the past years about the online. And at first, the last summer, I was really kind of nervous, as other people too, and I even attend Mark's presentation several times, workshops. So, but now I feel really comfortable because there are many courses already passed, and I'm happy to actually to teach the online synchronous and asynchronous. For the last year, I did, like Kathy said, I did some interviews with some students. And when they want to make an appointment with me, I just glad to do that. But I kind of forgot to do like Kathy did. I can intend on purpose make some appointments with the students. That would be a good idea to get to know them and let them feel, we are approachable, right? So that's a very good idea. And also, I have a question. When we have some group work for the course, but some students are out of the country, and when they do group work, they always have some difficulties because of the time scheduling, and I just don't know which way is the best to do whole group work, because if no group work, that would be too much workload for the students. And also we all know group work is also a good skill to develop. So anybody have any good idea how to assign the group work for the online teaching? Thank you.
Definitely a great question. Anyone have any thoughts they want to share on that? Yes, looks like Kathy, maybe.
Hi, Judy. That's a really good. I really struggled with that, and to be honest, I eliminated all group work for online classes. I eliminated it, particularly during the pandemic. I found that when they were trying to get together with all the things that were happening to them and the stress levels, it was just way too much to handle. So any group work I had set up beforehand was gone. Even when I was working remotely with synchronous, asynchronous back and forth, I said no. So I redesigned most of my syllabi and changed my assignments. And yes, I believe in cooperation. Yes, I believe in group work. But under some situations, I think it's just too hard. So I'm not helping you. I'm just telling you I caved. And if that gives you permission, maybe. But I'm not going to resume it until I'm back to face-to-face. I'm just not.
Good idea.
I might share a couple thoughts real quick if no one else has something they want to say. So I've also struggled with group work and online courses at times. I know one thing that is often advocated for is making sure there's some accountability. I mean, especially with the students being in different places, having some kind of plan might help. I know even my boss, when he teaches his one course, he often gets them to write kind of a charter, a plan of how they're going to organize themselves for the group project and try to keep to that. And there's a certain accountability piece. Students are saying, this is how we're going to organize. And then if they aren't, that's when there's also a plan for how to deal with that. If someone becomes completely irresponsive, what are you going to do? Maybe it is that you have to escalate it to the instructor, who then maybe has to change the groups or come up with a plan. Maybe there's a way that students are rating each other if they're not doing the work, if they're not contributing. So that might help. It might also be that you have to provide them with some ideas of how they can organize. We know some students are going to use things like Google Hangouts and stuff like that, but we might need to also provide them with asynchronous options too, because as you said, some students might be in vastly different time zones. So even something low tech like telling them you might want to organize yourselves in various shared documents. You might want to have a group discussion just for that group project where they can meet, also helps you kind of be able to check, oh, when they say this person did nothing, you can actually look and see, they didn't contribute to discussion ever. Those kind of things might help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll try it that way. You know, it's the students really reflect that, and then many groups, they seems like they still did a very good job, but some group, they really have some difficulties to communicate, to put work together, and yeah. Okay, thanks.
I'm not sure. I saw Tran turn on her mic. I'm not sure if you had something you want
Yep.
to share.
Yeah, just so one of my favorites tools for group interaction was Google Docs. So I had never used before pandemic Google Docs the way I'm using now, and I've adopted those in my courses. Those are great for some group projects if you wish. So I'm a big fan now of Google Docs. So you can have different thoughts, whether it's discussions or debates, or there are different ways you can apply on Google Docs. So, and again, multi-modalities, do you want giving them a choice, or whether they want to go for individual assignments or a group project? So some flexibility with it built within can also help.
Great point. I can see a few people have their hands raised. Maybe if it's okay, we'll go with Crystal first.
Okay. I was just going to add that actually that what we're using right now, Teams, I've found really helpful for asynchronous, because I hadn't had much experience with it before, but on a few of my RA positions and connecting with my supervisor sometime, it's been great, like working with another prof and a student to write an article. And we can go in when we have the time, but we have that space to do it and everything is in one place. Like, I find it a bit more usable than Google Docs personally, but yeah, I've been finding that really beneficial for any classwork or research work I have to do.
Kathy, did you have something you want to share as well?
Sure. Thanks. Yes, we have used a lot of Google Docs, and then I can give feedback, so that totally works. There was one course, now that I remember, thinking back to last year, that I did have them work in groups, so that remained, but it wasn't an online, and it didn't involve international students. I knew the students were all within the country, okay? So the time zones weren't as harried. And it was synchronous. So they went into breakout rooms. The breakout rooms were great, and I would give them at 45 minutes to an hour in a breakout room of in-class time and say, I'm going to do my whatever presentation, whatever you need to know for the first hour, and the second hour, you're in your groups. And then I went from group to group to group to group to help them, and they could request. And I did it before, tried to do it before a long break or the lunch hour or whatever, so that we could also go into the lunch hour so I could keep helping them. So, but that was asynchronous. So it wasn't, like I said, online where I never see them.
Oh, thank you for sharing. Well, I'm not sure if anyone else also wants to introduce themselves. If there's a burning question in your mind you think this group can maybe help with. If not, I've got a few questions we can maybe discuss that might help guide our conversation, but please do not hesitate at any point. If there's something you want to talk about, let's talk about it. So, based on even the presentations you might have gone to yesterday, I'm just wondering if there's anything you found particularly interesting, maybe something that changed your outlook on something about online teaching, and if so, what was it? Or did you have a favorite presentation for that matter?
I can start. Oh, sorry. Kathy, you go.
You go ahead. You go ahead.
I really like Nadia's Blue Sky University. Even the metaphor, like it has so much potential. I think the idea of how we define learning and moving from face to face to online really forced me to examine or rethink what does it mean to teach, what does it mean to learn, and I've been struggling with assigning a number, grading my student, whether it's undergrad or graduate student, because I do narrative inquiry. I ask students to do narrative inquiry, basically write about their own experiences as a language learner or teacher, and then what do an inquiry. So ask questions going back, and then figure out so what you learned from that experience, whether negative or positive. And I always struggle to find a number to assign, and I had no problem read and respond, but I always spend more time, I think, trying to give them a number. So when everything switched to online, I decided, okay, now I really want to, I guess, do something different. So I get rid of not really get rid of, because we still have to assign a letter grade to all the course participants. But I made it so that I'll have all the rubrics at the beginning, the first week, and then ask them to give me feedback, and we work together about, I guess, the rubrics and what's important, so revise. And so they have the rubric in mind before they even start their assignment. And then once I finish read and respond to their work, I just invite them to kind of, go back to the rubric and look at my response, and then think about what do you see that a grade will kind of fit, and then you do a self-assessment. And then if there's a difference between my assessment and their self-assessment, then I'll set up a meeting with them and then just talk through. So it became a negotiated grade. It's not me assigning, and I feel so much better doing this way, because the number thing never like, I was always feeling unsettled when I have to assign a number to all the I guess assignments, in particular because I think all my assignments are very subjective. Like there's no kind of multiple choice like multiple choice question would be so much easier. So that's kind of why I liked Nadia's class presentation, but also I think in the afternoon, Jess also talked about ungrading idea. I think it's along the same line. So that's kind of what I liked about yesterday's sessions.
I think we might be getting a bit of an echo. No, Noel or no. No, there we go. And I think Anita might have some thoughts on this.
I really thought that the Blue Sky University was really enlightening. The thought of not having a letter grade or a number grade associated was really interesting to me. The part that I struggle with that is that with international.
I'm in a meeting there now, and I'm muted. I'm not muted.
No, I think you're not muted. Perfect. Thank you.
The culture of a lot of our students from various different backgrounds is very numbers focused, letter grade focused, where there is an expectation of getting a specific letter grade. And that's just something that I think is ingrained from grade school through to post-secondary school, that they are considered that they've achieved something if they reach a certain number or letter grade. So the part that I struggle with having an assessment or a final grade that is not numerically or quantitative is that I don't think the students would accept it. I think it would be more of a struggle to convince them versus convincing an instructor.
Kathy shared a great resource from Jesse Stommel. The idea of ungrading is something he talks about a lot. Had the privilege of going to a couple of his sessions, and he kind of agreed the same thing. It can be very unnerving for the students the first time they try in a class with the ungrading, where they're responsible for helping evaluate themselves. And part of your approach it does have to focus around convincing them, A, you're legitimately meaning what you say, and explaining why you're going with this approach, how it's going to work. And it really comes back to the idea of trying to get that intrinsic motivation with the student, not just I'm playing the game of school and trying to get the grade. It's about, okay, I'm learning because I want to learn. Yes, Kathy.
Hi, yeah, I saw, I didn't see Blue Sky because I was in a faculty meeting, and so I have to watch the recording. Thank you, now I'm even more intrigued. But I did get to hear Jess Mitchell from Ontario College of Arts and Design. And she was talking about ungrading, and she's a follower of this other person, which I'm not familiar with, but I've always wanted to know about ungrading. So it was fascinating to me. So if you get a chance to listen to Jess's session, she did the closing keynote yesterday. She addresses this, and she has some wonderful strategies. So by all means, listen to her. And she gave us this link, which now I'm following, which I'm really excited about. I have tried. I give them the rubric. I give them the chance to grade themselves, that sort of thing. And it's funny because I teach in 3 different levels: undergrad, teacher education, which is kind of a postgrad, and then graduate studies. So they all have very different interpretations of what grades are and how important they are. And a number of them are really fixated on, I have to have the A+. They're very anal that way. So I negotiate with them. Okay, what do you need and how are you going to earn it? So I can say to them, you're going to get an A, or I'll help you work towards the A, but the A+, that's different. So let's look at that. So it's a lot of negotiation, but still there's a grade. Of course, there's a grade. So that's why when I talked to Jess, I said, I find that term a bit disconcerting, okay? Because it's not ungrading. We are grading. And she called it collaborative grading. And I thought, so that's what I'm going to be calling it when I go into my next term and start attacking it.
Not sure if anyone has any other thoughts about this. If not, maybe if there's another session you wanted to talk about, something else someone else really enjoyed. No problem. So yes, I know we've had a couple people come in recently. So right now we're just talking about if there was any sessions yesterday that you really enjoyed, you thought was amazing, or maybe challenged your beliefs and changed how you look at, say, the concept of online learning and the move from face to face. So I'll invite anyone to share if there was. Oh, and I should mention we were just talking about the blue sky one, so if that was your favorite, you kind of missed out on that discussion. But if not, we can maybe go on to another question as well. I can see people typing, so I'll give you everyone a few seconds. I think
Hey,
Nabucco.
Mark. Yeah, I'm just dropping in. Sorry to join your session late. I'm just hopping around for the debrief and synthesis. I think Kathy has her hand up, or did she have her hand up? Oh, no, maybe not.
I think that was leftover.
Ah, I see. And we got a quiet group, or is everyone reflecting?
Oh, just a temporary pause is all.
Okay.
So did you have a favorite session yesterday?
I liked a lot of them, and you guys have talked about the blue sky already. So I'm gonna say I really enjoyed Jess Mitchell's talk because she really brought home the idea of the international students having a very difficult experience in a way that was more real, I guess. A student going home to Africa and the difficulties they were having with 2 internet providers, and just the sheer magnitude of the challenges that they were facing. So that was one of the things that I loved about that session, and also seeing Jess in person or like virtually live giving a talk, because I hadn't had a chance to see one of those. I've just seen recordings. So big fan of ungrading or changing assessments too.
Yeah, we were just having a nice discussion about the idea of ungrading. Or,
Did you? Yeah.
Yeah. Some were talking about calling it cooperative grading potentially as well.
Yeah, I think there are some terms that came up, and yeah, I like that one. I think cooperative grading. So I'm working as in our role, Mark, like we're learning specialists, and we're more like educational developers. Mark, of course, teaches regular formal credit courses as well in astronomy. He's a very well-liked instructor. For assessment, I'm working with instructors who are trying to get rid of things like exams. So we have no exams in some of the things we're developing, and it's a pass-fail. So these are sort of humanities and social sciences courses at the undergraduate level, and we're giving out weekly assignments, sort of lower stakes assignments, and then the students can get feedback but no grade. And we'll see how it goes, because they're so used to writing, I don't know, papers and multiple choice exams, or even just short answer and essay exams. So curious to see. Yeah, and it was really helpful to hear Jess talk about how she introduces it, and she kind of puts it out there for the students, and like with many things online, there's sort of pushback from the students that are not used to it, and then by week 7, she said, or halfway through, just over halfway through, the students are feeling okay about it. They're getting braver. And I see Kathy's busy typing in the chat. And I mean, I really enjoyed the your discussion too, Kathy, about sharing your sort of vulnerability as an instructor. And I see that a lot too. I mean, I make all kinds of bloopers, and students tell me that models for them that it's okay if something goes wrong, you know, with new technology or whatever it is, an experiment for innovative pedagogy like ungrading. And they thought that, you know, I just went on, I negotiated with the students, I listened to their feedback, I modified some things, kept some things the same, and I just kept going even if it wasn't perfect. And we all learned from that, because most of the people I teach nowadays are instructors, and in the past they were BEd and MEd students. So, oh yeah, the multimodal assessments too. Did people use other ways of engaging students in assignments, like instead of say online discussions, if that's what you've used in education? Did you use anything else?
Great question. Anyone want to share? Have you tried anything new with the online realm, doing different types of assessments?
Yeah.
And I know we've had a couple newer people join recently. If you also just want to introduce yourself, please feel free.
Yeah. I'll get off the soapbox.
Maybe along the same lines, even if it wasn't a new assessment approach you tried, was there any new pedagogical approach or technological tool you tried using within maybe the past year when you went from face-to-face to online? Anyone want to talk about that?
I am the most impatient person ever. I'm waiting for someone to jump in. Yeah, so I'm going to share some things that my colleagues did. And they did things like video, like students recording little video responses instead of like text-based discussion or things that they did in class. And I think somebody has their hand up.
Yeah.
It's me again. I don't want to dominate this conversation, but I'm happy to talk about what I tried that really worked. In the master's program, in this one particular course, they had to take, it was a narrative inquiry, autobiographical narrative inquiry. So we were looking at our own narratives, and then they had to take a theory and they had to overlap the theory onto their personal narratives. And I taught them theoretical thematic analysis. And out of that, they had to create a multimodal project that represented what they learned from the theory, from the themes, and how it melded together. So it was an identity text. It was representing themselves, but it also had to be overlaid with theory. And the results have been phenomenal. And it was interesting because when I did this pre-pandemic, we could present them in class and they would do things like scavenger hunts and they would do a painting or someone would create a model. But then when we had to flip it, when I pivoted and we had to do it online, they could only present it online. Digitally, it became quite interesting because then they started going into the videos and the movies and the narrated PowerPoints and finding a way to do their art, because a lot of them wanted to do hands-on construction thing and embed it somehow into this. So there were all these other layers that were included. And I kept telling them, you don't have to. You can just take pictures and show us the pictures of what it is, the model that you've created. So I had one student create, she said, my life is a circus, my teaching is a circus, and all of the themes kept coming up as circus rides. So she created a hand cutting of an entire circus. There was a roller coaster and clowns and all these things out of paper cutting. It was brilliant. I mean, it was absolutely beautiful. And I said, just take pictures. She said, no, I had to video it. I had to move. And I was like, okay. So they got to learn more about technology, which was interesting and was not necessarily expected. And the projects got better and better. It added a whole other dimension to it. So those are the things now I'm trying to bring into the undergrad and into the teacher education. So how can we create these multimodal expressions of what you're seeing, what you're thinking, what you're feeling, what you're understanding? So it's a very personal meaning and has a different kind of expression. And this is also what I want my students in teacher education take into their classrooms. So I don't know, somehow it's become richer online. So I'm looking forward to seeing how it evolves for next year.
That is fantastic. Thank you for sharing. I mean, I actually was curious, just did any of them end up sharing some of that work or promoting it, say, in a more public space for others to see and even learn from? Or
Yes, yes. Some of them took it public. Some of them did it actually at conferences. Some of them have it took it into their classrooms. I had one woman, and she cried over this assignment because she said, I'm not creative and it's not going to happen. And I kept saying, trust the process, trust the process. And she came to her in a dream. And she phoned me crying and she said, I know what I'm doing. It came to me. And she saw her practice as a nest. And her role was to protect and to preserve. So she created a nest. And in it, she created eggs, and each egg represented different facets of her students that she protects. And then she cut a branch of a tree and suspended the nest attached to the branch from the ceiling in her kitchen and made paper cranes that went all around. I mean, it was absolutely beautiful. And she was so happy because she said, it's the first time in my life I've ever been creative. And she was so proud of it. And now it's in her office and she shows everyone. And and that woman's in her 40s. I mean, it's not like she's really young or anything like this. And she's just so happy. She felt like for her, it was a breakthrough. So they share them, and they share them in very different ways. And when we watched each other's, that class just ended. It was breathtaking. And everyone kept saying, it was so unique and it was so spectacular. Yeah, and really meaningful. So it was worth the effort, and it was worth the experimentation.
I don't want to keep jumping in too much, but this actually was kind of tying into a question I was thinking we could look at is are you thinking of trying to still offer a way to do those kind of digital approaches even if you go back to a face-to-face teaching of that class later? Like offering the option to face-to-face submission or like the digital still for those people?
Sorry, are you asking me?
Yes, sorry, I should have made that clear.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were opening it to the group. I'm sorry. Yeah, oh, yes, I'm definitely taking it back. And what I'm getting is permission from them to share them with the next classes. But I hold back on that because sometimes that can also be intimidating. So I keep dropping the seeds and letting them think about it, and then show the projects in increments. Oh, I'll show you a couple this time and a couple this time. So they get a really, really broad range of how simple it can be and how complex it can be, but how it's all meaningful and it's all theoretical. So yeah, it has to be done in stages because some of them will then shut down, and I don't want that to happen. So I have to be very, very careful that they feel empowered and not intimidated.
Anyone else done anything maybe when the move to online from face-to-face? Is there something that you now want to bring back if you go back to face-to-face? Maybe an assessment, maybe teaching a lesson, could be anything.
I was gonna raise my hand before I spoke, but sorry, I did the opposite. I just want to join the session here. I was in a different one, but one of the things that I noticed as we transition back to face-to-face instruction is that the students got used to taking their assessments online because we were designing everything, for example, in Canvas, and so a paper, pen and paper assessment no longer really kind of served the purpose. And it was kind of also an interesting experience for the instructors because they also got used to the system maybe grading some of those papers versus them having to do it on a pen and paper kind of basis. So I think that that's something, oh, my doggy, sorry. I think that's something that will probably continue, that we transition, and it will be difficult to return to a paper-based kind of system.
Anyone else have anything they want to share around that? Well, maybe on a similar vein, what do people think the future holds regarding online learning now? Now that everyone is forced in a way to be online for a year, do you think that things are going to go back to how they were after the pandemic? Is there going to be a bigger demand for online? Is it going to change how online is approached? What do you think?
Louisa's hand was up.
Elizabeth, I heard you for a second, but I think you might have cut out. I'm not sure if you had something you wanted to say. Maybe in the meantime, I'll just share. I know they have been doing more surveys, asking students what they've thought of the past year and what their expectations are going forward. And they have been saying that they were wanting more flexibility. Things like they've gotten used to the idea of not necessarily having to be somewhere face to face, especially we talked about it earlier a lot, the idea of the online international students, how they might have different time zones, but it's also even students who are local. They might be in the same city as your institution, but they might have other obligations. They might have family obligations, job obligations. And so the idea of increased flexibility, I know, could be a big push going forward. Our institutions looking at the idea of some high flex approaches where maybe students could come to class, maybe attend online, maybe then watch the things asynchronously. I don't know if any other institutions are looking at that or if people are exploring that themselves. That's an interesting point as well. Kathy shared in the chat that they are so interested in knowing what the professor thinks.
I was going to say that I think we have to have a little bit of buy-in from students, especially international students. Online learning, like I teach a lot of students from Saudi Arabia, the Middle East. Online learning was not the norm. As a matter of fact, it was seen as not good enough versus your face-to-face teaching. But I do think that because of the pandemic, they have started to see the value of online learning, that it's not that the students are just taking an easier route versus being in class and doing the more rigorous classwork. So I think there's got to be a little bit of a shift, and then we're seeing that right now. But I also believe that online learning is here to stay, not just because of undergrad and graduate students, but I also work with community programs where online learning was the one thing that allowed people from underrepresented, underprivileged communities to have access to education. People who do have maybe a job or two and they have to take care of their children, they were able to still come to school and learn English or learn whatever, be in a program, without having to leave their family and get a babysitter or have to have, a right to take them to the university. So the accessibility, the flexibility, and then the quality doesn't have to go down because it's online. So I think it's here to stay. But for undergrad and grad students, there might be, like you mentioned, kind of a joint, high flex blended modality moving forward, where we recap on what we had before face-to-face, but we add new parts to our classes. Even if it's a face-to-face, we add an online component to them.
Great point. I will note in my role, I get to talk to everyone across the university, which is really fun. I did want to note that even in things like the student training, I've talked to, like, my wife works in careers, and she's noted that they want to keep a lot of theirs online as well, or at least an online option, because they did notice an increase in enrollment. It was easier for students to attend a session rather than having to come in. It gave them more flexibility. And I did hear the same thing about some of the student groups. It's like some of the teams and things that normally are, okay, we're going to have a face-to-face meeting, but science especially was talking in a session recently that they did see more people joining these groups because it was easier, and that's something, even when they go back to face-to-face, they want to keep that online community, give more options, because they think it will build a bigger community and allow people to join who may have been missed out on before. Not sure if anyone has anything else to share about that. Got about 10 minutes left. Got a few other things we could explore. Firstly, though, I want to kind of open it up again. Based on everything we've talked about, is there anything else, again, a burning question or something you just want to throw in and hear people talk about? I can see Kathy has her hand raised.
I would like to ask a question of the group. I do see that there is, personally, a usefulness and a practicality to the online, particularly if it's synchronous and asynchronous. Then there's the human connection, and which isn't always possible, of course, because the students are international. However, because I'm in teacher education, what I did discover, and this might be a bias, so I'm asking your opinion, was that the online teaching did not work for children. I do not see success in it. Okay, I have to qualify that. There were some children that liked it better because they weren't at school and they weren't being bullied. and they didn't have the stress of people assessing the way they looked or what clothes they were wearing. So there were a small group of children, and I'm talking children from grade 1 to grade 8. Okay, so a small group of them liked it better, but consistently, as for a learning platform, I think it was a mess. And in Ontario, this is coming up a lot now. Well, we should be allowing kids to be doing online learning. And I think, oh my goodness gracious. So I want your opinions on that. Like, I'm hearing different things from the parents and different things from the kids. Yes, I get the kids wanted to go to school because they were just sick of being in the house, but were they learning well? I don't think so. So if I'm wrong, please give me your opinion.
Great question. I think Nita might have raised her hand first.
So I do not think you are wrong in any way. I am a mom of 2 boys. One's in grade 3, one is in grade 6. Pros to the online learning were that, yeah, there are some social issues that some kids go through that are not a part when they're online, but we're also missing other social opportunities as well. But from a curriculum perspective, and this is something that myself and my sister, who is a teacher who's teaching online, as well as the plethora of family and friends that I have, the curriculum is not being met in any way. Almost all of us have recognized that our children did not learn the appropriate amount of curriculum this year to move ahead. And my understanding is that some of the school boards are accommodating for that for next year. They're going to either redo some pieces of it or just accommodate the next level learning. I did hear that there's an Indigenous community that has decided that their entire school board, which I believe is 1,200 students, are all going to repeat next year. So because they did not feel that they were able to provide the appropriate curriculum. I can't remember the name of the community. I believe it was in Northern Ontario, but I could be wrong about that. But that particular community didn't have access to internet. It didn't have access to devices. It didn't have a lot of supports in place for the students to be successful. So they were even at a further detriment to learning than our children in a traditional, city community. So I definitely think that there were some missed opportunities, and in the defense of the teachers, I think they did their best. I really do think they did their best, but you're asking a significant portion of an educational community who had no interest in teaching online, who had no experience teaching online, thrown into having to figure out platforms, having to find electronic textbooks, having to find online assessments and things like that, when this wasn't part of their norm. So I'm not surprised that that the curriculum suffered. You can only ask people to do so much, right? And I think the teachers did the very best that they could do. I think the students did the best that they could do as well, but the combined efforts, and with the uncertainty in our climate, not knowing if we're going back. And so some of the teachers didn't plan for a full year teaching online. They planned for a week out, a month out, but all of a sudden they have to plan further and do more. My sister, who chose to teach online, had a classroom of students who chose to learn online. So she benefited a lot because those students wanted to be there. They had chosen that as a learning opportunity. So from the perspective that you brought up of some of the school boards want to have this as an ongoing thing, she had some students who really did do very well in that platform. And I will say they were students who she identified would likely be the students who would not have a social group at school. She was teaching grade 5. I believe she was teaching grade 5. She said that these were students who likely could have had social anxiety at school, or maybe had experienced bullying, or maybe, had some other outliers, but they wanted to be there. So she thrived and those students thrived, but it doesn't go to say for everyone who was forced into that. So if the school board turned around to me and said, you know, we're considering all of the students repeating next year, I don't know if I would argue it. I really don't. I think there's a lot of opportunity for missed resources and missed curriculum that happened this year. But I do feel a lot for the students who are in grade 8 and grade 12 who are making a transition to a different type of schooling next year, and they may not be prepared for it. Just my thoughts as a parent.
Oh, thank you. I think you also wanted to share. Oh, sorry, Louisa. I think do you have something you want to say as well?
Yeah, this is more also as a parent. My son is 10 and he had to transition to online while he was just starting his 4th grade. Now, I wanted to give you guys a little bit of background. I live in Florida, in Orlando. So the education system might be a little bit different, but of course, emergency online teaching, the teachers did try to do their best. I did see that a lot of caring, flexibility, more of a parenting model for the teachers themselves was what worked. And then he transitioned into his second part of 4th grade, and that was not successful. He was very stressed. He did not pay close attention to what the teachers were saying. So we decided to transfer him into a what we call Florida Virtual, which is a curriculum that is designed for online learning. And that worked wonders. So he didn't really have to stand in front of a computer all 5 days of the week, where he had to just submit his work and maybe attend some of the live sessions based on what he was covering. So it was much more self-paced, a little bit more work for the parents, but that worked wonders for him. So we discovered that what the emergency plan was for the education system in Florida did not really work for him, but the one that was really thought out as an online curriculum did. So it's just those two sides of the coin of we're just going to do this on the meantime versus we've planned this out to be fully delivered online. So I think that that was an interesting thing that we had to live through for my son, and I think we're going to stay with online learning for him because it had allowed us to travel and be in different locations, at least as a parent, and then he's still doing really great in school. So yes, thank you guys.
That is great. Thank you all for sharing. I mean, I hate to cut off the conversation. If there is someone wants to say, otherwise I think this is probably a good place to end our discussion. We're got about a minute to spare, but I just want to say thank you for being here. Thank you all for sharing. I quite enjoyed this chat, and hopefully I'll get to see you at some of the other sessions throughout the day. So I will stop the recording now.